Welcome to the environment section. So this is a part where we're just going to quickly jump over all these settings and things that I did to set up the environment, the scene where the simulation is going to get placed. So this includes the mountains, the trees, and also the lake. So creating the ocean spectrum for the lake water surface, as well as setting up the scatter system for our trees. The one thing that I do want to note here is that this is not the main focus of the course. That's why we're just going to jump over this. I'm going to go through the stuff that I did. So if you're going to do this yourself and not just copy it from the scene here, that you know what to do or what kind of steps it involves to get there. We're not going to be creating node by node as we did with the previous section, which was the simulation part, where it is crucial, I think, to actually go through the process of creating everything. But for the environment part, this could be the course on its own. So that's why I'm just going to quickly go over it. So first, let's jump into our scene. And so where do we have it? Here we go. And we did not import our cameras. This is something that we should have probably done in the first section. All right, so let's go ahead and create the cameras here. So let's quickly drop down Alembic archive and then navigate to our folder. So that would be here under job and then animation cameras, cameras. And then let's just grab the first camera here. Let's untick this build hierarchy, because if we don't, if we click here, build, we jump inside, it creates these subnets and places the camera in there. And then we look here in the drop down, we get this super long name, and we also have to add this in our shots where we basically reference this camera. That's why we just untick this, and then it's just going to build a normal regular transform hierarchy from top to bottom. And so if we click build or update, if we jump inside now, we can see here the transforms that it takes to create this camera. And now if we go here to the drop down, we see there's just the Alembic archive / camera properties. And so we're just going to call this our cam and then 010. And now if we jump into the camera, we should actually get our camera motion here. And then let's just quickly do this for the rest of the cameras. So let's just give this a nice blue color, duplicate the node. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think this should be all the shots. So this is going to be shot or cam 20, cam 30, 40, 50. Probably get the point now, 60, and cam 70. And so now let's go over here, and this is going to be 20, cam 30. Just go ahead and update all these here. Cam 40, 50. I tried this before where I was hooking up the object string in here, so it would actually grab the name of this here, and then that would be automatic, and we wouldn't have to double name this. But that for some reason did not work. It created some strange behaviors, which I don't know where that came from, so I just kept it this way. So just disable the display flag for all these, select them all, build update, and now if we jump inside, cam 10, 20, which is a bit closer, if we remember from our previous. So let me just quickly go there. So we have projects, breach, and then we have under anim, previous. And if we open this up, here we have here in the beginning. So this is our wide shot here. Just make this a bit smaller like that. Not sure what there we go. And then this is the closer one that we have here, and then we have a really close one of the pillar, another close one, and then the same shot again. So cam 20 where the ship is coming up, then a medium shot, the same one again before, and then 2 top shots. Now if we have a look here, go through them, cam 30, the pillar, or the close-up of the ship. So if we turn on the ship here, where the ship is coming up, and then we have the shot 50, which is one of the pillar shots. 60 is one of the top shots, and 70 is the close-up top shot. So that's more towards the end, where it's rotating around the ship there. All right, nice. So now we can go ahead and quickly jump over the creation of the environment of the mountains. So let's just go in cam 10. And what I did here is I loaded them in already for you, and also set up the material so you can just go ahead and copy it from the scene if you're using the same environment. I would recommend creating your own by the techniques that I'm going to explain in a moment. And so if we turn these on here, and just wait for this to load. So this is the foreground mountain, so the main one, and then this is the background one. And this is just the same, just transformed. As you can see here, negative scale, just to flip it around, and then also some rotation, and also a bit rotated up. So this is going uphill. And so if we go inside here, what we have is a low res and a high res. So we're displaying the low res mountain here. And if you navigate to your project folder, and you go to the import, you should have a landscape folder. And in here we have the final geometry, the final low res, and then we have two scatter systems that we're going to go over in the next section, I guess, for the trees and the bushes. But for now, we just need the low res to display and the high res for rendering. And this was just created with a standard Houdini terrain generation. And I'll just quickly pull up that scene so we can jump over this. So let's move this over here. All right. So basically just start off with a height field, up the resolution here to 496 by 496, or rather the size of it. Just added a bit of noise to it. Just wonder why this is so bright. Not sure. Just probably have to live with it for now. And then basically, so this is just like a very subtle, so we're not creating like huge mountains here. And then we just run through and erode here. So if we go to the very first frame, not sure why this is failing. Maybe if we can reset the simulation here. And so the reason it's failing here is because my VRAM is already filled up and I can't really get it to clear. So I probably have to close everything, and also the recording as well, since I don't have the strongest memory card. But then I could show you basically how this works. So this would erode the field, where it would just create these fields running down, stuff like that. And then next, what I do here, just paint some strokes, and then use this, break this up by a noise as well. So we just get like some patches there, and then I use this to remap. So basically pull up or push down, and then we have the same where I painted the area down here. And so we'll first pull this up here. So we get these areas pulled up. So I just use this as a mask. And then same for here, where I also create some areas that I just pull up, just to create some peaks there. Then another paint for the inside area here, basically where I said, okay, this is going to be the lake area. And then I just push this down. There's a lot of ways you can go ahead and create this. This is just one way, and I just quickly slapped this together in a very short amount of time. This is also why it looks a bit messy here. And then same thing, what I did here, I wanted to have some interesting like shapes on the edges. So I just painted some areas here, tried to create some islands, did a bit of blurring on that mask, and then added a bit of noise to it just to have a bit of breakup. And then if we have a look here, I create these cuts inside the geometry there. And then again, added some additional paint areas on the edges here, where the water surface would be living. And the way I did that, I just visualized a grid plane. So if you just drop down a grid and then create this really big, so let's go for 5 kilometers, and then visualize this here. And I think the water surface initially was a bit lower, so somewhere around here, or I guess like this. And then these are the areas that I painted, so just went into I think wireframe mode like that, and then just painted the areas that are on the borders And what I wanted to do here is pull these up and create like some small little islands. And so if we have a look here, now I get these peaks here. And this is basically stuff that is showing out of the water just to create. So if you look here from the water surface, you get like these small little island and patches and stuff just to break up the border and edge and to have something more interesting. And the next thing that I did here was mask by feature. And this is, I just used the height. And so for a certain range, just to grab the peaks of all these bushes here. And then I just did, since this is all a volume. So if you look at here, you height fields is just a one-dimensional volume. And so I just did a volume wrangle just to grab those parts. And what I did, I have the mask here for these areas, for these parts that I pulled up. And I just used that as a mask to only grab the peaks of these mountains that I created. And then I just did a height field clip and then basically pushed them back down below so they're not all peeking up, and I just have like some simple stuff that is flowing up. Then another, a resample, so basically up-resing everything. And then I just added a distort just to give everything a bit of breakup, a bit of reshaping here. This always helps creating some additional interesting shapes there. And now if we just display here our grid in full mode, and we can see here our interesting carvings in there that create these interesting islands and this nice landscape area border type where we have like some some cliffs here, and then water that would go inside, and then the islands that we have that we created to push up there, just to create a bit of interest here. And then another road where we basically create these downflowing rivulets, and the final result of that was this here. And this is what the road node does, is basically it just simulates water flowing down the surface. Also a bunch of other stuff where you have like gravel and stuff accumulating, where you see the brown stuff here. And this just makes everything look a bit more interesting. And then I think I just created a mask here, which is by features. Here I just masked the slopes, and this was later used in shading. And we'll go over that part in a second here. And then I just converted this to a geometry. So I think this takes a while. We'll just cancel this process and go directly to the final output. And then this was the transform, the final transform that I came up with that looked nice from the shot perspective. So I just rotated it around, and then I just added this transform before. So when we load this geometry in, it already sits at the correct position. Now if we look at this, this is our final geometry. So obviously have to rotate around because we did change the position of this, and it's a bit slow here because this does have quite a few polygons, and but there's a lot of nice interesting detail that we have in there. And so this might be easier to just have a look at the not the final but the low res geometry. Actually, it's easier to navigate around, and so we can kind of get an idea of what this will look like later. And the same thing that I did for the scattering is first to test, I just resampled my my terrain here just to have a bit lower resolution so I can work with it, and then afterwards turned this off and then did the scattering based on the high resolution volume. And here just another mask by features where basically I combine the height, so everything that is above the water level, and then also based on the slope. So I don't want to have trees that live on cliffs because that will look weird. And then also the higher it gets, the less there would be, because I don't want to have trees living in the top areas. But also I did later have a remove based on the height, so I can adjust that later as well if I want to. And then just basically a scatter with some random attributes. And there is a good class for from side effects for height field generation and also the scattering, and where it goes over all these settings. And I do provide this scatter system here that I cached here. So not the system, but the finished scattering points here, where you can see. Let me just show them here. And this is basically where we will be scattering all our trees, obviously removing based on height. So we don't want to have them living in top areas. And so this is just a fade off towards the top, randomly removing points. And I think we already created this in one of the simulation sections. And then the same thing for the bushes, but only the bushes live at the bottom area, so close to the water surface, just to have a nice integration between the trees that obviously have the trunk, and then we have the bushes sitting around the water surface area there. All right, and to test this out, I just loaded in a proxy version of a tree here, and then did a basic scatter. And so we have a look here. It is a bit heavy, but if we go a bit closer, we can already see our nice distribution and this random orientation and size and stuff. This all comes from the high field scatter trees, but I think we might maybe go and create our own distribution, but we'll see. This already works quite nice. And so if we combine this with our, let's just use the lowers here for now. So if we add this in here, and then we can see basically, just color this so we can distinguish that a bit better. And then we'll give this a grayish brown tint here, like that. And then we'll add a color field of blue to our lake surface. Connect that. And there we can see already how this would look. And so this is also something interesting that we get with our small little islands. We have like some islands do get some trees on there, and this will really look interesting once we have, I think the water surfaces should move up. Yeah, like this, because now it's sitting on the 0 level. And now, as you can see, we're getting some interesting variation here as well, where we have like some small parts where the trees are sitting on top of our islands. And it may not look, for example here, this looks a bit off, but this is due to the low res geometry, and so there will be geometry that the points will sit on, so don't worry about that. And then this gives an interesting environment to work with. Same thing for the bushes, so we could visualize this as well. So if we just merge those two together, then at the bottom part here, you can see we're getting bushes scattered around the bottom areas, just to add a bit more variation and interest in those areas. And we'll set up the tree instancing and the bush instancing in probably one of the following sections. All right, so this is basically the basic terrain setup, how to create this. So feel free to watch the side effects masterclass on the terrain generation or any other resource, or just dig it around for yourself. It's quite straightforward and really gives some great results there, especially the ability to just mask in some stuff, or you can also add geometries for yourself that merge into the height field, and then do another erode of that, and then in the end just upres it, do another erode, and then you have really nice geometry to work with. And so let's jump over to our scene again, and let's start rendering this. So jump inside here into our ROPNet, and let's just remove. So here we have our light environment, and then here, go ahead and just get rid of that star because we're just using our environment light. And then let's force our render. Let's just pick it here. It's probably quicker. So we want to render our terrain main and terrain background. And just accept that. And for our camera, we want to grab our cam 10 here, or shot 10, whatever. And let's head over to the rendering tab, quickly save our scene, just so we don't lose those changes in case it crashes. And let's go ahead and hit render here. All right, and this is what our environment will look like. So basically some snowy kind of mountains, and then we have our lake surface, and then you can see here on the as soon as it gets underwater, it gets this kind of blue tint. This is something that I just added in the shader to add a bit of interest towards the edges. So we do get a bit of coloring there and a bit of brightening underneath, because this does also refract through the surface. Just adds a bit of interest to that area. And so maybe we can go to a different shot here. So let's go for the 20 and then render this one and see how that looks. All right, let's just isolate our region here so we can test render in there. And then if we go quickly into our rendering settings, oops, that was the camera. Here, rendering settings under rendering, and then we have objects. Oh no, rendering, and where is it? Rendering, and then here the tile size, just set that to 8 or something, and then reduce this interactive rendering, and so we can get a direct view of our final quality. And so let's just jump inside here, our material environment. This is also something that I provided. You can just go ahead and use this or set up your own. Let's just disconnect the color here and also turn off the noise displacement and just render this flat as is. So this is what we would get. So let's just lower the exposure here. What we would get from the standard shader. And I think what I set up here, just regular color and a bit of specular with a very high roughness, just so we get a bit of reflectivity there. And to break this up, to add a bit of detail here, what I did is just added a displacement. And this displacement is also based off the noise that we created before, to use this as a displacement amplitude, but we're also using just the standard noise that we have in here. So if you go under displacement, turn off true displacement, because we are never that close that we really actually need true displacement. Regular bump works perfect for this, and just tick on in noise displacement, and we'll go for a really low frequency here. And that's it. And then this way we do get this nice nice detail here towards and this just makes it look like a kind of a rocky, cliffy kind of thing. And then what I did here, this is I really created this really quickly, so this looks a bit messy here, but basically just creating different noises, mixing them together based off different parameters. So here, for example, we can get rid of this. No, don't need that one here. But for example, the height here, grabbing the height, fitting this to different values. So from 0 to 400, I think this is the maximum height of the mountains, and using that as a mask. And also, for example, for the water level, using the height mask. So for example, to go from 0 beyond, then creating this color field, which I think is, let me see here. So this is the watercolor, and just mixing this based off the depth. So the ramp deep that we have here. So this is the very top, which gets a lot of color, and then the further down it gets this color, it just gets multiplied there. Then we're also grabbing our mask. This is the I think the feature mask that we created before. So if we jump back to our scene here, where we created here this mask by feature and this mask by slope. So if you have a look at this, that was basically these areas here. And so we'll use this to also color this white. And then also we have our debris mask, our water mask that we're using. And there are a couple of other masks that we could have used here, but this was enough for our purpose. And then we just mixed those together, added another noise on top of that, or a couple of noises mixed together, and then this gives us our color value. And so this goes into our base color. And then if we save this here, and then we just get a nice rocky kind of texture. And this also changes depending on the altitude, so how high it is, the further up it goes, that changes as well. And also for the snow, for example, this is what we're doing here, is using the snow mask. So let me see if we can visualize this. If we go run that into the base color, and then this should be dark here and then bright in those areas. For example, this is where we have a bit of brightening. And then this is used as well for our noise amplitude. And so basically here we're scaling it down, so we don't want to have too much noise going on the top of the surface where we have the snow lying, because the snow shouldn't look like rock. And I think it's just the invert here. So we're just measuring the length. So basically the luminance, and then multiply add constant. So pre multiply, or the multiply -1, and then post add of 1. So just inverting that as we did before. Yeah, and then maybe if we jump back to our shot 10 again, so we can have a look at the snow here. So you can go ahead, dig through this, just hook these up to the base color, have a look what it's doing, and then it's pretty standard, nothing too complicated, just to add a bit of interest to our terrain that we created. Let's just stop that there, hit re-render. And then what we do want to do is also, while we're shading, always jump back and forth between our LUT that we have. And so we're just going to load this in a moment here, just to see how it looks with that with and without, just so we get the values that we actually want. Let's just wait for this to finish. There we go. And there you can see here, for example, I'm using the debris layer, the water layer, and also a height layer to fade this. So the further down it gets, the less snowy it is. So for example, we do have debris and water layers here, but this just gets masked by a height gradient. So only the top areas get the snowy parts. And then this just adds or gives like some really nice mountain details. And so let's go ahead and load our LUT here. So if we go to our job, import, and then we have our LUT, let's just load that in there, and then set the gamma multiplier. Just wait, hope it's not going to crash now. Yeah, set this to 1. And now we have our photographic exposure here applied, and then this really looks like a nice outdoor mountain scene, snowy scene. And you can imagine our trees here sitting on top of that. Really sells the environment there. All right, I think this covers everything that we need to know for the mountain section. And then in the next part, I think we'll see if we go over the trees or if we're going to go over the water surface, whatever makes sense the most. So feel free, create your own environment, maybe you can probably apply the same shader because it is based off of the standard mask features here, or create your own shader, play around. It's really easy once you start to get a hang of it. It's really fun creating these environments because you can get so much detail and so much interesting stuff here that really looks natural, and gets some interesting effects there.